Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're digging into the work of Richard Harding Davis, one of the most famous war correspondents ever. Using his incredible eyewitness accounts from over a century ago, we're going to see how the whole romantic idea of war just completely falls apart when you see what it's actually like up close.
So think about it. It's 1898. For most folks back home, war is this grand, heroic thing you see in paintings or read about in poems. But what was the reality on the ground? Well, thanks to Davis's notes, we're going to take a journey from that popular myth to the pretty shocking truth that he saw with his own eyes.
All right, so our story starts during the Spanish-American War. American troops are landing in Cuba. And the way Davis tells it, the vibe was less military invasion and more, well, apart.
He paints this picture of absolute chaos. You've got guys singing on the ships, others literally dancing naked around campfires on the beach. It sounds like a midnight beach bash, not a covert landing. This was the myth of war in action, this big, exciting adventure. But that dream, it was about to become a total nightmare.
And just like that, everything changes. Davis yanks us away from that festive scene on the coast. He takes us to a quiet, misty field outside Santa Clara, a year before the Americans landed, to watch the execution of a single Cuban insurgent, a 20-year-old kid named Rodriguez. And right here, this is where the romance of war dies.
Davis puts us right in the moment. You can practically feel that cold morning dew on the grass as the soldiers march into position. And get this, their band is playing a lively, upbeat tune. It's so completely wrong for the moment, it's chilling. The whole thing feels less like a battle and more like a stage being set for this very private, very lonely act of violence.
And the picture Davis paints of Rodriguez himself is just, wow. He's not being dragged to his death. He's actually walking so fast his guards can barely keep up. And that one detail, the cigarette, it says everything. It's not cocky. It's just this small, quiet act of dignity. He's basically showing them, you can kill my body, but you can't touch my spirit.
Then, just as the triggers are about to be pulled, something absurd happens. Something almost unbelievably cruel. Rodriguez is ready, he's made his keys, the officer's sword is up, and then they stop. Turns out the firing squad was in the wrong spot. They were about to shoot their own troops on the other side of the square. So they pull him back from the edge just to move him a few feet so they can kill him properly.
But what really gets to Davis is the quiet. No big final speech. No heroic last words, just a body falling into the grass, a silent end. It's such an anticlimax. This young man who showed so much courage is now just a shape on the ground, and the second the shots are fired, the band strikes up its cheerful tune again, as if nothing happened. That's lesson number one in the reality of war.
So from that very personal story of one man's death, Davis zooms way out to the total chaos of a big battle. And what he sees, it isn't organized lines of heroes clashing. No, it's a messy, terrifying, and completely impersonal kind of fight. Yeah, forget what you think a battlefield sounds like. In this new industrial war, the air itself feels like the enemy. Davis says the shrapnel doesn't have some heroic scream. It's more of a jarring, ugly, mechanical twang. But the bullets, the things that are actually killing people, they just whisper by, almost like rustling silk. Imagine that. The deadliest things sound peaceful. It's a bizarre, terrifying disconnect.
And this brings us to the really big question that Davis is grappling with. If war isn't some heroic duel, if you can't even see your enemy, and the weapons are this impersonal, then how does a soldier die? Does it have anything to do with being brave or being a good soldier?
And here's his absolutely chilling answer. He says, death isn't a reward for cowardice or a punishment for anything. It is pure dumb luck. One man dies because he stood up when he should have stayed down. Another lives because he bent over to tie his shoe at just the right second. It's a coin toss, a spin of a roulette wheel. All that romantic stuff about glory, gone. It's just random chance. Okay, so now we get to the main event of the war in Cuba, the famous charge up San Juan Hill. You've probably heard of it. It's become the stuff of legend. But Davis was right there, on the ground, and what he saw was very different from the myth. First, you gotta understand just how bad the situation was. The American soldiers were totally pinned down in this valley, getting torn apart by Spanish machine guns and rifles from the hills above. They couldn't go forward, they couldn't go back, and their commanders weren't telling them anything. Attacking an entrenched enemy uphill without artillery? I mean, that's just military suicide.
So when the first few men actually started to charge, Davis wasn't feeling patriotic pride. He felt pity. He thought he was watching a horrible mistake, a pointless waste of life. His first instinct wasn't to cheer. It was to scream at them to stop, to come back.
Because it wasn't this huge, thundering wave of soldiers like you see in the movies. It was just a handful of guys. A thin, scattered line of blue uniforms walking right into a storm of bullets. There were so few of them, it looked less like an attack and more like a tragic sacrifice. But the truly amazing thing was how they did it. They didn't sprint up the hill yelling and waving flags. No, Davis says they waded up it. They stepped heavily, like men trudging through deep water. It was a slow, stubborn, grinding climb. A victory of pure, bloody-minded grit, not speed. And that plodding, determined walk, that was the real miracle of San Juan Hill.
So fast forward a few years. Davis goes back to Cuba, long after the war is over. The armies are gone, the guns are silent. And he starts to think about what really lasts, what's left behind. And his conclusion, it really gets to the heart of everything we've been talking about.
He finds the battlefield is, well, it's not a battlefield anymore. The physical scars are almost completely gone. The trenches that were dug for soldiers are now filled with vegetables. The barbed wire fences are now just fences for cattle. Nature and life just moved back in and covered it all up.
And this is the final, powerful point he makes. He says that in the long run, nobody's going to remember the politics, the treaties, the foreign policy changes. That stuff all fades. What makes a place like San Juan Hill important, what makes it last, is the memory of what people did there. The insane courage of those few men climbing that hill. The quiet dignity of Rodriguez with his cigarette. That's the real story. The human story. That's the only thing that truly endures. So it makes you wonder, right? When all is said and done, what really lasts from these conflicts? The political outcomes or the human stories?